You can be in the same room as your kids and not really be there. Maybe you're busy trying to catch up with your work email or your personal email, or maybe you're mindlessly scrolling through social media while your child is trying to talk to you or try to share with you maybe a silly joke or just trying to say what's up and show you a drawing that they did. Here's the hard truth. When we give half our attention to our kids, the message that we're really communicating to them is that they're not important. And I know that's not a message that we want to hear, but the goal for today's talk is for us to pause and do an attention audit. Hey, before we begin, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Ezekiel. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm passionate about helping other dads learn how to lead better so that we can be our best for our wives, our kids, and also the people that we get to serve. And today we're going to be talking about attention audit. This is part of a 4th series that I call the underrated importance of our presence as dads. And in part 1, we talked about connection points. And part 2, we talked about non-negotiable, setting the boundaries that we need so that we can protect what matters most. And today we're going to be talking about attention audit. A stat that I saw recently is that about 140 times a day, we check our phones. Now, if you do the math correctly, or if I did the math correctly, that's about every 10 minutes that you and I are checking our phones consistently. And I know dads, we're homes, but our minds might still be at work. And for those of you who are working from home and have the flexibility to be able to work and also being able to take some time off throughout the day or in the afternoon so you can be there for your kids, it's very challenging because you want to be there. You want to be present at your kid's basketball practice or their dance practice or whatever it is, or their piano. But at the same time, you have your mind connected to your work. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing or that we're trying to neglect our kids, but that's just reality. We're always on in a world where we're always connected. I heard a parenting expert said this, that we live in a world where overly connected, but we're underconnected. And if you're like me, I'm very entrepreneurial. I know that God has a plan, purpose for my life, that He has so much more for me to glorify Him, to add value to others, to my family. I'm always thinking about new ideas. And what happens is that when I'm at my kids' martial arts practice or even in piano, or even when we're watching TV, my mind is always thinking, trying to come up with new ideas. And here's the problem with that is that not only do we miss the moments with our kids, not only do we miss the moment we get to have with them at that current moment, but we miss the opportunity to connect with them. And if I can be honest with you, thinking about this talk, one of the things that robs us when we live a distracted life, when we don't do these attention audits and pause long enough to see what are the things that are stealing my attention away from my family, from those who matter most, is that it can rob us of our peace. And I know for myself, that's really what happens when I don't turn off these ideas, when I don't consciously just be present at the moment. I get anxious, I get worried about bills and things like that, or maybe I'm falling behind when God is saying that there is a time for everything. There's a time to work, and work is created by God. And there's also a time to just be still and appreciate God's presence, and also appreciate the blessing of being a parent, the blessing of being a husband. So today we're going to be talking about attention audit, because here's the thing that I'm realizing is that being distracted is also the same thing as being absent. We can be physically present, living in the same house. We can be sitting at the same dining table and not really be there. We can be there physically, but mentally, emotionally, we're not there. And I know, like I said, this is not an easy thing to reflect on, but an unexamined life is not worth living. Maybe a lot of our burnouts is because we don't pause long enough to understand what are the things that are robbing my attention? What are the things that I shouldn't really be paying attention to? And what are the things that I should be appreciating? Because a lot of the things that we're hoping for, the blessings that we hope to have, if we're not careful, we miss it because they're just buried on the stuff that we already own. So today we're going to be talking about attention audit. And I want to share with you 3 steps on what we can do to identify the things that are stealing our attention so that we can redeem those things back, so that we can take those back. Because our family doesn't need a distracted us. Your family doesn't need a distracted you, but they need us to be not just physically present, but to really be there. I heard that one of the best gifts that we can give our kids is us being fully present, us just really focus on them, being aware that they're there and just really appreciating them. So step number one on how we can do an attention audit this week is to notice our defaults. What do I mean by that? When your kids walk in the room, what is the thing that you're holding? Is it your phone? Are you on your laptop? Do you have the remote control? When with your kids, what is your default? Now, let me take it a step further. When you're hanging out with your kids, maybe on a weekend after church or just relaxing, during a commercial break, if you're like me, you don't want to pay that extra money for some of the subscriptions. It's just ridiculous. And when there's a commercial, what is your default? I'll be honest with you. My default is I would sneak out of the family living room when it's commercial break, and I would try to go on my laptop and just write down an idea. But that 1 minute, that 1 minute sneak in or sneaking out can turn into 5, can turn into 10, can turn into 15 minutes. So your next step this week or today is to, for one day, just observe what is your default. What is that thing that captures your attention the most? Now, step number 2 is to trade one moment. So what this means is to pick one distracted habit and replace it with full focus. Now, for me, like I said, my default is brain is always having this new ideas. It's just running. I'm really passionate about learning. I'm passionate about building. And that's something that I've embraced. God has given me that entrepreneurial spirit. But every good thing can also become a bad thing if we don't steward those gifting that God has given us. So for me, I tend to go to my laptop. I tend to go to my phone and write down a note or things like that, jot down some ideas. And one of my default, or one of the moment that I decided I need to trade in, is that, I think it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that God showed me is that when my kids, they get ready for bed, we tell them, hey, get ready for bed. So they would shower, brush their teeth, put on their pajamas and so on. For my son, that could be 5-10 minutes, depending on what he does. And then for the girls, that could be 20 minutes in the shower. And I would just go in and try to build something on the computer and things like that. And what happened is that I would say to myself that I'm just going to do it while they get ready. And that could go on from 5, 10, 45 minutes. And next thing you know, my wife's calling me and say, hey, come on, it's time to pray. We got to put him to bed. So I would miss that 5 minutes of them getting ready, and me having that me time could just turn to a long time. And next thing you know, they're getting ready for bed. And I missed the moment to connect with them. So the one moment I decided this week is that I need to stop doing that. And again, I'm not saying I do this perfectly, but Monday I said, I need to stop doing that. So I trade that one moment of doing that, getting on the computer and just, I'm just going to wait for them. Or if I do go on the phone, as soon as they finish getting out of the shower, putting their pajamas, I just want to be there next to them. Last step is to create micro moments. So the first one is notice your defaults. What is that thing you're holding? And then number 2 is to trade one moment. So again, for me was that instead of me going on the phone while they're showering, I'm going to say, I'm going to wait. I'm going to go spend time with them and then create micro moments. So going back to my story about what happened this week was that when I decided that, I'm going to do a better job. And as soon as I heard them, they're in the room, the girls were laughing. This was on Monday night. I said, hey, let me just sit there. For those of you dads who have girls, I don't know if you're like me, but it's a little bit more difficult to connect with my girls than my boys. And also it's the different personality. So I just sat there, they're doing their pretend play with their Lego. And I just sat there and then I tried to just engage them, ask questions. And, that one question led to more questions, to silly jokes, to what they're listening to. And then a lot of tickling, a lot of laughing. And Monday nights usually is one of our busy nights because my son, he usually has his martial arts class. And it's usually me who would take him to class. But because my girls in this season, in this point of our parenting season, they prefer to be with their mom. So they prefer their mom to put them to sleep and so on. The youngest one, she wanted me to put her to sleep. And when I was getting ready to leave to go to martial arts with my son, she was starting to fuss. And so I ended up staying with them. And that micro moment, I was able to just let her know how much I love her, especially for a middle child. She's usually a more introvert one. So I was able to just rub her back, pray with her, just reassure her that I'm proud of her and letting her know that I love her. And in about 10, 15 minutes, she was like knocked out. She was asleep. And that's the thing I was talking about. There's these things that we have defaults that we think is not a lot. It's not taking a lot of our time. It's not robbing our time, our presence with our family. But again, like that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, that could go on to 45 to 60 minutes. And here's the thing that I realized that Monday night, my girls, I took them not that very long to fall asleep. And while wife and my son were in class, I had some time for myself to read and to just have that me time for myself. And especially for those of you who have small kids, they grow up so fast. I get throwbacks from Google Photos, from Amazon Photos of how my daughters were, and now I can't even carry them anymore. And one thing I want to share is we need to be careful not to complain about the things that we're experiencing now, moments that we will miss tomorrow. It's parenting. They say that the days when you have small kids, the days are long when you're parenting, but the years are very short. So friends, what is that one thing? What is the default? What is the things that is stealing your attention? When we put this attention audit, when we start noticing our defaults, trading one moment and creating those micro moments, we can redeem those moments that are being stolen from us and really enjoy that blessing. And I wonder how our peace, I wonder how our mindset will change. And I wonder how much more we can contribute when we go back to work the following day in our ministries and things like that, because now we're coming from a place of appreciation of the blessings we have in our home. We're coming from a place of margin instead of coming from a place of like distraction. So it's not just benefiting us in our home, but it's also benefiting the people that we get to serve outside. Now, let me tell you that I don't get this perfectly all the time. And as we close today, I just want to share with you a story because this is something that, I'm learning the hard way, and I hope that by having these moments with you, this is something that you can learn from my mistakes, my experience, so that you can avoid it, so that you can appreciate more, you can invest more on the people that God has put in your life. I'm talking about your wife, your kids. And again, this is not to say that for those of us who dropped the ball, that it's over for us. One of the things that I learned from my counselor when I became a parent first time was that parenting is like riding a bike. Just like when we learned how to ride a bike, we would fall, we would get off balance and things like that, but we don't give up. We get back on the bike again and we just keep going and going. And as we continue to pedal, we get better and better. And parenting is the same way, and the more we do it, the more we stay in community, the more we have discussions like this, we start having awareness and we got better and better. But, we will fall, we will stumble from time to time, but we get back up again. Our kids don't need a perfect parent. They need a consistent, they need a parent who is present and a parent who will not give up, a parent who will always learn, a parent who will apologize, when they make mistake. So going back to the story about how I wanted to close our talk today. So my son, he had a basketball scrimmage about a few months ago. And there was about 10 seconds left in the game. I said, if this scrimmage, it's not like a playoff or anything like that. So I said, we have 10 seconds, getting late. So I decided to pull up my phone, text my wife to figure out what their plans were during the time. And then I heard the buzzer go off. Everyone was cheering, high-fiving. Everyone was happy. And I got up, got my stuff, got my water bottle. And I told my son, hey, I'll meet you outside. I'm going to use the bathroom. Then we'll go in the car. And as soon as we got in the car, my son was so excited. He said, Dad, did you see my buzzer beater? And I said, what are you talking? And I was like, oh, crap. Did he have the buzzer beater during that last 10 seconds? I was ashamed to say this, but I pulled up my phone, pulled up photos that I took or videos that I took. And my son said, Dad, you were not there. You were not paying attention. And this was the dagger. Even until now, I can still visualize my son's expression. I can still hear I can still hear the exact word he said. He said, Dad, it doesn't matter because you were not there. Wow. The most important person in that game was me. Everyone was cheering my son, giving him a high five. The most important person, me, his dad, his best friend, was there physically, but mentally, emotionally, was not there because I got distracted with a phone. Friends, I just want to be real with you. And again, by God's grace, we know that we're forgiven. We know that we can get back up again and be better. We're not defined by our mistake. It doesn't define our identity. But it's also not to excuse us not learning from these things. And I want to close with this in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. It says, "Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith." I know, friends, I've given you the framework, the systems. Notice our defaults. Trade one moment, create micro habits. Those steps are great. But I think the greatest step that we can take is to fixing our eyes on Jesus. Here's the thing. We cannot do it on our own. And the good news is we don't have to. Because of Jesus, because of the Holy Spirit, God has chosen you to be the dad. God has chosen you to be the leader in your home. And in John 15, Jesus said that he didn't just choose you, but he appointed you to go and bear much fruit. So friends, what is that one step that you need to do today? Let me know in the comment, what is that default when you first see your kids? What is that one moment that you're going to trade? And what is that micro moment that you're going to create this week? Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you're blessed. I hope that you're encouraged. I hope that you're challenged by our time today. And if you know another dad who can use this encouragement, who can use this reminder, why don't you do me a favor and please share it with them? Again, thank you so much. And I'll see you again. God bless you. And I'm rooting for you.